Denison.
And I'm Kev Bamboo, and this is Rip It Up.
Rip It Up is a topical show about life impacting creatives in the world today.
Yeah, and on tonight's show, we're joined by professional musician Gabriel Piers-Mantell, where we'll be talking about living the dream and the impact of COVID-19 lockdowns. But just before we do that, I'm going to give a little update on a charity marathon hike that I did just a couple of weeks ago. So far, we've managed to raise around about 500 quid, which is pretty good considering, the situation and everything. And there's still few donations coming in, but Milo, I've still not received your donation.
I'm sure I mailed the check. Like, I received it.
Oh yeah, that old chestnut, eh?
Yeah, it's definitely in the mail. Guaranteed.
Mental note of check.
Yeah, I'll get on that. It's funny. I actually was going to donate, and then I literally completely forgot about it. Like when I was looking at the site,
he's feeling guilty now. It's just all the excuses are coming out.
I'm sure I've got like £1.50 around here somewhere. I can put in an envelope.
Scratch it together, man.
Yep. All right, so let's get into this. I think it's time we speak to our guest, Gabriel. You prefer Gabe, right?
Yeah, Gabe's fine. Anything's fine. I've had all kind of permutations. So
okay.
Yeah, shock me. It's cool.
Cool. Well, welcome to the show. And I guess let's just start off with tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into playing keys?
I've had a weird kind of path into the job that I do currently. I'll try. It's kind of hard to give the sort of highlights, but basically I got into keys when I was very young and kind of started playing, just kind of improvising and stuff like that. And there's like a photo of me I've got a young 3-year-old son, Otto, and then there's a photo of me about his age on the piano, like sort of tinkering away. I'm sure it wasn't anything particularly sort of well-beating, but I was definitely kind of playing like early on. And then I kind of had music lessons and went down a sort of traditional sort of music route, classical lessons. I went to I got a scholarship to do jazz at this nearby sort of music school called Wells Cathedral School, and that was like for 2 years. And then after that, I did art college, and it was special effects for film was the course that I did. That was like 3 years of that. So very different, unrelated sort of stuff. But while I was doing that up in London, where I live now, I was still gigging and kind of playing with sort of various different sort of bands and playing in quite a few different scenes as well, which is unusual, I think, for somebody that age. It was really fun. And then after I graduated, I, for various kind of reasons, had like kind of an epiphany and decided I wanted to actually pursue playing. And then there was a long process of kind of putting myself about and teaching myself what I needed to catch up on from scratch. So from then on, I was self-taught really. And so I kind of learned on the job, and plus with, sort of self-study or whatever you call it. Yeah. And so now I've been sort of doing this full time for about 12 years, working as a keys player.
Do you play in different bands or a specific band or on your own?
I play in different bands, so I work as a session player.
Okay.
Definitely kind of in the last 5 or 6 years, that's been my main kind of thing. So there's some bands that I play with more regularly, but it's very varied. I've kind of done lots of different styles of playing, different scenes, so it keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
The invoices are fiddly. It's just like there's a lot of admin. I'm not naturally good at admin, like lots of musicians aren't. So that's been a learning curve. But yeah.
No, but did you mention that before you fully got into music that you was going to work for Aardman Animation?
Yeah, that's right. So that was the special effects thing. So this course was art for film, and it was all like physical making. So it's like props, prosthetics, very niche. It's like really fun to do. They were not necessarily life skills. Like if anybody ever wants like a goblin sculpted, I'm sure you all are. I'm the guy. Or kind of, there was one project where I made like a massive pair of nail clippers. We had to like make a big kind of enlarged kind of household object. So at the end of the project, everybody had there was like a huge pencil sharpener. Someone made like a Lego man. I spent about 3 months making a pair of nail clippers like this big. And
That's brilliant though. I mean,
which is weird, but yeah,
make me a large pair of nail clippers any day.
they're still kicking around, mate. I mean, if you're in the market, yeah, no one has them so far, weirdly, but like they're still there. But I kind of majored in stop motion, so I was going to do that. And then my final piece was I think it was like a 5-minute short film that I made. I sort of shot it and made all the puppets and things.
Cool.
And it was 5 minutes long, and it took a year to make. It took half a year to prep, and then the shoot took about 6 months.
Yeah, I'm always so impressed with people that do stop motion. Like the time that goes into it. Like I don't have the patience for it because of the time that it goes into make it, and it's always so impressive to me.
Oh man, well I mean I've only sort of done obviously that little bit of it, and like I kind of think like a lot of people who play instruments, there's definitely a part of me that's kind of happy to do something very low key in a room on my own for like long stretches of time. But even for me, stop motion was hard going, and I was animating monkeys, so like little monkey characters. I won't bore you with the plot of the film. It was no Oscars yet for that, but it was me in like a darkened room for pretty much 6 months, very slowly moving a cartoon monkey.
Wow.
But weirdly satisfying. It's more fun than it sounds, but
yeah.
Did you do your own music for it as well?
I did, yeah. I'm making a mental note to find wherever it is on the internet and delete it after this. It's not, but I did.
Exactly. People are going to start searching for it.
Oh man, I'm sure. but yeah, as Kev, as you said, that was going to be my job after that. So once I graduated, I was going to work for Aardman. I kind of got like a job offer for Aardman, who, if people don't know, they're the guys that do Wallace and Gromit, and it's like a big UK stop motion studio, and I was going to do that. I was going to do like junior model making, and then then I broke my arm falling off a toboggan, which we were chatting about the other day, and that's one of 2 toboggan related accidents that I've had. I've actually broken another bone falling off a toboggan, but during the course of the kind of fallout from that, I had to sort of have a big, deeper meaningful about my life, and I decided to do music. So money well spent. That's great.
no, definitely. And I mean, obviously, what a kind of thing just to get a position with Aardman, and then have that, like you say, that kind of not a defining moment, but a moment that was like, oh, actually, broke my arm. I want to focus on my music a little bit more. It is interesting with that as well, because obviously, music and the kind of current era that we're in, COVID-19 obviously had a big impact on you and the music industry as well. I mean, you could tell us a little bit about how that impacted yourself and how you adapted as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I remember the last gig I had before all this kicked off, and it was a gig up in Newcastle, and the news was just kind of coming in about all this sort of thing, and half of the band were really positive, and they were like, "It's going to be fine. It's all like." It's going to blow over, it's like the flu or whatever. And then the grumpier half of the band, which included me, many of them parents, like the sort of dads of the band, were like all sort of together in a room, like kind of being a little bit less positive. And we were all convinced that it was going to be fairly massive. But we didn't know how soon it was going to hit. We kind of got the sense that it was kind of coming. And that was the last gig any of us did for like 12 months, so we kind of thought that it would be bad. And then we all kind of went back home. And that was it, lockdown started. And initially it was kind of very stressful, and we were kind of in panic mode, kind of working out how we were going to make things work. And then after about like a few weeks, we sort of got a bit more of a sense of what it was going to look like, and realized that we were just about going to be okay. We were lucky, we sort of had a game plan and stuff. And then from then on, for about a kind of sort of 9 to 12 months, although there were some really hard periods where people that I knew got ill and stuff like that, but that aside, there was some real positives. So it's like the first time that I've really had a break, like a proper break for like a long time. And by that I mean not just time off, but time off with no prospect of work. Like for lots of freelance people, even when you kind of have time off, you're still kind of keeping an eye on like, there's this gig I've got to learn, or I should be doing more promotional stuff or whatever. And so it was really nice actually having that pressure like lifted. So that was quite nice. And also seeing my kids and my family was mega. So I was just looking after my boy like during lockdown. And that was great, you know, because it's, you know, very rare for anybody, but particularly anybody who works in kind of freelance as well a lot, to have that opportunity to just chill with their family. So that was really great. And then after Christmas, traditionally musicians at that time of year, it's generally quite a quiet time of year. And for whatever reason, generally it's quite kind of bleak. So like a lot of people talk about, January, it's miserable and there's no gigs and you're left on your own to sort of worry about all your stuff. And from then on, it became quite challenging. And I sort of felt quite definitely really ready to play again. And so that was a kind of a trickier period. But then, you know, gigs have started to come back. And it turns out, I need to play the piano to be sane. And I think my wife was relieved. I think she was quite happy to sort of, you can have too much of a good thing.
Get out.
So it hasn't been like, there's been some positives, definitely. Yeah.
With the lockdowns, because in the UK we had one lockdown, then they kind of let us out of lockdown for a short period of time towards the end of last summer and then locked us down again.
Yeah.
Were you getting any bookings during that brief period where we weren't in lockdown? Because it was kind of a partial lockdown, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I did get some bookings. So they kind of started to there was a few things that came back in. And that was very strange because, again, it's that sort of thing of suddenly going into gig mode. And it took kind of a while. It takes kind of a while to kind of get back into that sort of mindset, you know. And then I kind of finally got myself into kind of that sort of gear, like performing kind of gear. And then it was lockdown again, but I was still in that kind of slightly kind of wired space. So again, I think there's a lot of my family, my wife being very patient, just sort of waiting for me to decompress a little bit.
Your wife was working during that time?
Yeah, so we've been very lucky. She's a teacher.
That's good.
And she works at a nearby school. So she was doing Zoom teaching.
So basically the two of you and under 3-year-old house at the same time.
It kind of works surprisingly okay, as far as, unless she's being very polite. But like the party line from her is like, it was fun and I enjoyed seeing you guys. But she would have these kind of long Zoom meetings, which would go on for ages and would be sort of quite stressful and stuff. And there'd be a point where she'd sort of said everything she had to say, but she wanted to get out of the meeting. I probably shouldn't say this online. Maybe you can cut this. I don't know. But she
we'll sort it. We'll do it.
But she'd signal to me, like kind of, you know, off screen. And I'd give Otto, my kid, like some paintbrushes or something, and then just sort of send him into shot. And then she'd be like, I've got to go, my kid's trashing a place.
That's nice.
So he was her red band option. So yeah, we sort of found some workarounds that were kind of quite good.
I think that's a good advice actually for anybody listening or watching right now.
Yeah.
You need to get off a Zoom meeting and you have a kid in the house, just kind of
give them some scissors.
Exactly.
Yeah. But wasn't there a period as well that you discovered something that could have potentially ended your career as well?
That's right.
During lockdown.
That is true. So one of the things that was kind of weirdly turned out to be a positive was when all the COVID stuff literally sort of initially happened. There was a few weeks where we were obviously trying to get everything sorted and we were in kind of panic mode. And during that kind of 2 or 3 weeks, I didn't play keys for the first time in like a long time. You know, it's like the longest break I've had from playing. And when I went back to playing, I realized that this finger on my left hand was really hurting when I played. And I kind of gradually realized that it actually had been hurting for a long time. And I got used to it, you know, and it turned out to be RSI, repetitive strain injury or whatever, which is really dangerous for musicians. It's like a career killer. It can be really bad. It kind of puts you out of action. And the best way to sort of treat it is to, I mean, there's conflicting opinions, but basically is to go very easy on it for like a long period of time. And if you are playing, sort of do so very gently and stuff like that. And so it's been really good because I've basically had like have a chance to rebuild the technique in that hand over the period of like many months, which I wouldn't have had otherwise. I'd have had to play through it really. It's very lucky. If it hadn't been for that, I would have just carried on, and it probably could have been quite a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously, so does it feel like it's a lot stronger now than
it does? Yeah, it does. I think so. I was playing like a lot of I sort of set myself, because I've got quite small hands anyway, and there's a few kind of classical composers that are sort of notorious for having these huge sort of spreads. They kind of write these pieces. So like Debussy. So I was trying to play this Debussy piece, which is like. It's all like kind of huge kind of left hand spreads, and I kind of learnt it a little bit previously, and I kind of could play it comfortably, and I noticed that I couldn't make any of those kind of huge for me sort of octaves and ninths and things.
Wow, yeah.
So that was like set myself like a task to sort of get that down by the end. And so once I finally was able to play it again, it was nice, because I knew that I kind of managed to get myself back to square one-ish, So it was a nice chance to do that, yeah.
Gotta say, already massively impressed. I'm a big fan of your stuff anyway. Like, just
thank you, man.
What a guy. And we're not even got. Sorry, go on, Mike.
No, I was going to be like, what? You can't just turn to the left and just start, pounding out some, classical music. Come on, I thought everybody could do that.
Well, you should.
On a weekend, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, no. Well, it's great to finally have a fan. So you and my parents. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm sure they are your absolute, massive number ones.
Well, it's mutual. They're great guys.
No, I was just going to say, so obviously like all those changes and things that you've mentioned about, during lockdowns and the kind of adaptations from COVID and all those things. It's kind of obviously interesting because obviously everyone has a different perception and take on things, and that kind of bridges us to our kind of public response survey that we do in most of our shows. And on this one, it's about living the dream. And, from some people's perspectives, they may say, Gabe, he's playing all these, great gigs, don't see anything else that goes on. And they're like, yeah, that dude's living the dream. So, but we're going to go and take it to the survey and see what kind of responses we've got to that question that we put to them. And we're going to relay a few of those, and then we'll discuss that, and we'll discuss our own kind of thoughts and feelings around that subject. So I'm going to get
thoughts. I'm up for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a few. Milo's definitely got some as well.
All right.
Yeah. So we basically asked the public, what is your perception of living the dream? And we gave them a little bit of an example just as to kind of break them in. And it was like, do you feel that it's all relative? Is there a defined blueprint of what it should be? Or maybe you fall somewhere in between? So yeah, we put that out, and we had several responses, and of like the first like multiple choice options, most of the people, we had 72% said that it's all relative. Nobody in there put that there's a defined kind of blueprint to a perceived living the dream. And a few, about 30% said that they fall somewhere in the middle. They think that there's a little bit of something there, but also that it's mostly relative. But we had a few comments as well. We invited them to kind of give their own thoughts as well. So I'll just get those up. And it wasn't just me and Milo with all the comments in here.
Just making stuff in.
Dave from Romford says. Sorry, Dave from Romford, by the way. No, so we've got several on here, and I'll read a few of the best ones out. So some people, I'm nearly 70 and have in fact lived my dream. I just enjoy what is left and try my best.
Yeah.
Somebody else said, living the dream.
But they didn't say what their dream was.
No, they didn't expand on that actual dream. So we might have to tap that person up. Pick their brains. Another guy said, living the dream is relative to each individual person. It's wholly and totally dependent upon what the dreams and hopes and goals of that person are. Outside forces, opinions, etc., have no bearing and don't matter at all, which is pretty, I like that. And someone else says, I think it's relative, as living the dream can mean very different things to different people. However, if you want to live your dream, then you have to be intentional about it too. Make it happen. Don't sit back and wait for it to happen. So I suppose that kind of falls a little bit into not necessarily a defined blueprint, but kind of making your own kind of blueprint towards your relative perception. But I'm going to bring that back to you guys as well. What is your perception of living your dream?
Right, mate. Well, first of all, I am fascinated to know what the first guy. What's the dream?
I am. Yeah. What's his dream?
Because I know very. The majority of the people that I know are musicians, and I'm sort of lucky to know quite a few guys that are sort of older than me, further on in their career than me, who have definitely achieved other people's kind of blueprints of dream living, and they don't feel like they've lived the dream. And it turns out it's a very kind of hard thing to do. So this geezer, we need to track him down, because he's the one person that's sort of hit upon how to kind of get to the end of your career and feel happy. I mean, there was a famous interview that Sonny Rollins did at the end of his career a few years ago now. He hung up his horn, he stopped playing sax. I think he had arthritis, I could be wrong, but he did an interview of like a jazz magazine. And this is like, one of the kind of absolute cornerstones of his instrument. Like he moved the music forward. Like he was an iconic musician, and had achieved the dream by like a lot of people's metric. And they asked him if he had any regrets about his career, and he said something along the lines of like, I've just always hated my playing. That was something, and which is kind of like an amazing thing to say. There's quite a lot that you can take from that. Like on the one hand, you can be like, well, isn't it amazing that this bloke has kind of done all this stuff, and iconic gigs, and he's written tunes that are standards and all this sort of thing, but he still kind of is feeling all dissatisfied and wanting to kind of keep pushing and stuff like that, which is amazing. There's another small part of me that kind of thought, bloody hell, like I'd like to at some point feel at least slightly satisfied with anything that I've done, and if Sonny Rollins doesn't, then I think I'm going to have trouble kind of getting to that point. And I think as far as kind of living the dream goes, I think my blueprint for it personally would be to be able to make a really like a comfortable living, doing with a choice of different kind of playing different music that I love to do, and kind of playing lots of different sorts of things, but all of it being stuff that I really is up my street. And that would be kind of my ideal sort of thing. And to have a balance between that and the rest of my life, and I think that's the really hard thing.
So not just financial security, but the creative freedom as well, to be able to
creative freedom, and just general kind of freedom to be able to kind of like have both sides of my life kind of to be able to have the time to kind of do both things, and that's a balancing act, and that's kind of what I'd kind of like to do, but it's a real, I mean, I think anybody who works in the creative field, musicians definitely, partly there is a kind of a chronic sort of dissatisfaction that everybody experiences with what they do, and I don't get the sense that ever goes away. So I really don't get the sense that people kind of achieve big kind of ostentatious success and then go, right, that I've achieved being good at piano. From my experience, that feeling of sort of satisfaction actually it kind of goes up and down on like a weekly basis. There's some weeks where I'm like, oh man, this is great. I'm good at piano. And then there's some weeks where I'm just like, geez, it's not happening at all. And I think that's a very common thing. And it's something that people don't talk about a lot, actually, but I like to talk about it.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I find that when I do, musicians often pipe up and it turns out everyone experiences similar. Yeah.
I was going to say, because you touched on it quite nicely then, I think across a lot of creative medium, there is that kind of like self-deprecating factor that you just, but maybe that's what kind of, when you're kind of near the top or somewhere near the top or on your way to the top, it's that drives you forward because you're continuing to kind of like, you want to improve.
It's a good question. I actually think I know exactly what you're talking about. And what I actually find is that people, the more supposedly comfortable people are in their status as like a good musician or a successful musician or whatever, they're definitely more inclined to talk about this kind of thing, like insecurity and all that sort of thing. And my actual suspicion is that they're vocalizing something which everybody up and down the ladder experiences, but they just have that little bit more security in their kind of status or whatever you want to call it, that they feel like they can talk about it. I think the people that are the least likely to ever express that sort of thing are people who feel like they're on the back foot in their career, and people who feel like they haven't, they're really at odds with how they feel about themselves. If you have, a small degree of success, it actually becomes kind of weirdly easier to talk about all the imposter syndrome and stuff that you suffer from. And so I do think, it's something that is like probably a universal thing. I could be wrong, but that's been my experience of chatting to people.
Well, it's an interesting subject because I think as humans, we do have this idealized where we want to be. And then even if you achieve that, then there's still something else because it's in our nature to kind of want more than whatever it is. It's like billionaires, why do they need more money kind of a thing? Or musicians that, have reached the top of their field, that, what else do they need? But, or actors or whatever. But I think there's that desire to achieve that helps us in like a creative industry to be creative. Because I think of musicians, I think is a perfect example of this. I think of a lot of musicians when they're younger, their music's, they're coming out with more music, they're doing more music, that kind of stuff. But then as they get older, I mean, look at like Eric Clapton or Rolling Stones, right? All great musicians, but like, when was the last time that they came out with anything good? But they're still, the Stones are going on tour this year, actually. But they're just going to play all their old stuff. They're not going to do anything new. So it's like the closer you get to that dream, is it the less creative you get, or is it? I mean, it could also be an age thing or whatever as well.
It's a really interesting. I know exactly what you're talking about. I think one of the things is that there's definitely for musicians a kind of a self-awareness sets in as you progress. And as a session musician, you're almost kind of trained to be able to dissect music to such a degree that, you hear something, you can kind of break it down into its component parts. And it's almost like a kind of a heightened kind of criticism. You'll recognize, techniques that people have used, production techniques, to recognize kind of chord progression and stuff like that. And it makes you very efficient at your job, but it actually kind of makes you a lot more self-aware of what you're playing and how you're playing, because you have so much context for it. And there's something about when you're younger, because you're less well-informed and you're less inhibited by that process, I kind of think weirdly that does lead to kind of more easier and more authentic kind of artistic expression, because you don't know what you don't know, but you're able to really emotionally get on board with whatever you're doing. I think a lot of the great artists who had this kind of period when they were younger of just unbelievable kind of inspiration, it's often the same. There'll be like a kind of 3 or 4 album period where they just kind of churn out this amazing stuff, and then there's a point where it suddenly kind of starts to subside a little bit. My suspicion is that what's going on there is during the 3 or 4 album period, they are so kind of emotionally engaged with what they're doing and focused on it and kind of uninhibited, that they're able to access whatever it is that leads to profound creativity. But there comes a point where, like, album, whatever album it is, where suddenly, you're aware of the need to kind of be experimental, you're aware that people are wanting something from you, and then comes the album where everyone's just playing spoons or whatever, or like some kind of weird gimmick. But it stops being authentic, and that happens. And definitely with playing, there's a kind of something that I've talked about quite a lot that I think is true of me, and I think it's probably true of quite a few different players. And I was chatting to a sound engineer about this last week, and it turns out there's actually a term for it, but I forget what it is, unfortunately. But it's basically, I think that you could draw a graph of people's musical development and against kind of their own sense of achievement and happiness and where they are.
Would that be like a Venn diagram? Is it a Venn diagram? I think, is that one?
Something like that. Yeah, that sounds. It's a German sounding name for this. How bad? I'll find it. But when you're very young, your technique and ability accelerates very fast, and you're just like learning all these scales, and you're like, oh man, I can play all fast, and it's great, and I'm killing at whatever instrument I play, and then there kind of comes a point where you've kind of got a lot of technique down and a lot of kind of scales and things like that, but you suddenly realize actually where you sit in the context of everything else, and at that point the self-esteem just plummets, and then your learning curve actually kind of becomes a lot shallower but a lot more kind of profound. And it's that's the kind of point where you become inhibited, I guess. But it's also the point where you start to make real progress as a musician, and that progress is kind of characterized by not kind of how you're doing things, but what you're trying to do with them. There's no good being able to play every chord or scale or whatever if you're not saying anything. So it becomes about how to say something with that language. I've gone on a huge tangent. I don't know. I've interrupted your stuff, so sorry.
No,
you can tell I've been on my own for like a year, and I'm so desperate to. Yeah.
No problem whatsoever, Gabe. Some really interesting stuff there. And from my own kind of angle, I'm still thinking about the guy who is, got this certain kind of elixir to living the dream.
Who is he? Yeah.
We've got to find him out.
Sure. Track him down. Yeah.
It is on the subject of living the dream, though. It is kind of an interesting how opportunity affects that and your effort that you put into it. Because I'm thinking, if you live in a place where you don't have the opportunity your dream is, to be a piano player, right? And maybe you live in a place because you mentioned that you started playing when you were 3, so that means you had a piano.
That's right.
So if you maybe live in a place where you don't have access to a piano, so you still have that dream, like at what point can you try to move down that path? Or, stuff happens in life and maybe you have to take some job that also interferes with that kind of a thing. So there is that aspect of opportunity with living the dream and how close to that dream can you get? So, maybe you won't get exactly to where your dream is, Gabe, but you're much closer than say, somebody else might be, or same with you or Kev, we might be closer to our dreams than another person might be. So it's kind of an interesting thing to look at.
That's a reflective comment, actually. No, I like that.
That's really true. I mean, there's a book that I recently read. Michael Lewis and Malcolm Gladwell are one of those guys, and it's all to do with this kind of idea of the self-made man and kind of like what that actually entails, and where whichever author that is sort of settles is that there's no such thing, and there's a kind of a myth surrounding the idea that even somebody who kind of comes from literally nothing and stuff, that the nature of being a human being is that you meet people along your way who help you. You're lucky enough to sort of find yourself in circumstances where you have an extra advantage and stuff like that. And I've definitely been very lucky in many ways to have, hugely supportive parents and family and friends who've kind of helped me out. And to come from the background where I'm able to kind of go to like a music school and all that sort of thing. And so, yeah, it does sort of change the metric, as you say, for like of to what extent do you think of yourself as successful? I probably think of myself as more successful if I'd come from a much more disadvantaged background where there was less kind of facilities available for me to kind of pursue doing this, so it's all a kind of a sliding scale, really, and I think a lot of it's to do with how you feel about yourself as well. So yeah, but no, that is a very kind of interesting point. It's very relative, I think.
But also talking of that as well, aren't you working on a project that helps disadvantaged kids as well?
That's right. I'm just starting to work on something. It's called Music for All, and it's a charity that my friend Ian Cullen is involved with. And yeah, it's aimed at kind of literally that, really. It's kind of giving children who are at less of an advantage access to music and kind of tips and some sort of general kind of tips and kind of hints and sort of teaching them how to kind of pursue music, and yeah, I'm sort of beginning to be sort of involved in that, on a sort of low level, and just kind of have been trying to do a few kind of bits and bobs to provide some content for that. And it's been really nice. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking, so as well as like obviously access to instruments that wouldn't necessarily regularly be, available, does it focus on things like kind of funding and kind of like structure in that kind of pathway as well?
I think it does. I think from the to the extent that I'm involved with it, my kind of role has been to just kind of provide some video content where I'm attempting to share tips and kind of ideas about playing an instrument that will hopefully kind of that these kids will hopefully find inspiring and helpful, and yeah, just some kind of stuff that they wouldn't necessarily have access to normally, and it's been a really nice thing to do. And one of the things as well about music as a general kind of thing is I love it. It's an amazing career. But it's very inward facing, to a certain extent, and I think it's I like to think it's a really powerful job, and it's very important that we have live music, we have art and all the rest of it. But in terms of the experience of kind of pursuing it yourself, it can be quite a kind of focused, kind of one-dimensional kind of plane of focus. So it's really nice to have the opportunity to sort of do something actively for other people as well, because it's a very, musicians tend to be very, very kind of focused people who are and a lot of the kind of the good and bad things about music and working as a player are to do with how you see yourself in relation to what you're trying to do, and so I think generally it's a very helpful thing to kind of take your eyes away from that a little bit. And that's actually been going back to lockdown, that's actually been one of the good things for me, is that I'm now, because I've got a kid, I'm now identifying not just as a keys player, but also as a dad and stuff like that. And that's really good for me. It's kind of, there's something about that that's very sort of centering, makes you a little bit more stable as well. So yeah, I think it's good for musicians to have other stuff that they do.
Absolutely great.
Sorry, what's it called again?
It's called... God, this is so bad. It's been a long week, guys. Music for All.
Music for All. Is there a website or anything that people can go to?
There absolutely is. What I'll do, I'll send you guys a link. I wonder if you're able to sort of stick it under here.
Since we've been talking about music, you gave us a little sample there. Do you want to entertain us with a little ditty of some kind?
I'm going to play I Can't Make You Love Me by Bonnie Raitt.
Wow.
That was beautiful.
Thank you, man.
Lovely, man.
Yeah, it's a lovely song anyway, so that was great. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, dude. Yeah, I always enjoy playing it. Was the dog chiming in?
Yeah. Is that your dog, Kev? Did I keep hearing it?
It's my sister's dog, so
apologies. Okay. All right. No worries. I thought it was Gabe's.
It probably picked up a little more because I was away, so I literally just I'd judged my timing right just to fill up on water, but no, it's beautiful, that one.
Thank you, brother.
Absolutely beautiful.
So I had a gig. So Bonnie Raitt is a big favourite of my dad's. She's kind of a dad favourite generally, I think, and definitely like a favourite of mine. And I had a gig, BST in Hyde Park, which is this sort of festival that happens every year. And it was the ultimate dad lineup. It was an amazing lineup. And it was like Bonnie Raitt, James Taylor, who else was it? Paul Simon was like headlining. It was Sean Colvin, and Bonnie Raitt, obviously, who wrote that song, which is like one that sort of both me and my dad loved. And my dad, and then a band that I played with, War Thomas, were also on the bill. We were like first on the bill.
Nice.
And my dad came along. I got him a ticket to come and see it, and so he kind of came along and sort of watched our gig sort of backstage, which was great, hilarious for me, just sort of seeing him sort of seeing me at work, and it stressed him out. he was sort of there watching us build all the kind of the risers and stuff behind the stage, and he was just like looking at all the cables. He's just watching us. There's like so much that can go wrong. I was just like, yeah, that's right. This is why I get stressed. But then afterwards, we went and saw the whole sort of thing. But we watched Bonnie Raitt, and afterwards we both went back and met her.
Nice.
Which was like
awesome.
it was a super nice moment, and it was nice to do that with him. It was wicked. He rang me a while ago out of the blue and said, he was like, that gig that we were that festival, that thing. And he was just like, I think that's one of the best days I've ever had. I was like, oh, that's super nice. It's like over the what about the birth of your 4 kids? And he like genuinely thought about it. He was just like, no, I think I prefer that. I was like, oh, good. But no, it was
that's
a nice
really
day.
nice, actually.
Yeah,
I like that.
And it would just be cool, getting to meet her and everything as well.
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah, which is pretty nice. Yeah.
She's awesome, man. Yeah, she's a really cool person.
And what a lineup as well. Anyway, just at that festival.
Oh, I know, that would be a great show to go
awesome.
to.
Yeah, it was mega. Even the musicians, like for James Taylor was Steve Gadd on drums, and he's just like one of the most iconic players around. Really funny, I could see the drummer from the band that I was with had got backstage. I was in the crowd, but from my position, I could see him backstage watching Steve Gadd. His face was a picture. It's kind of sort of shock that he was loving it, man. Yeah, it was cool.
So this part of the show, Gabe, is where you get to turn the tides, because we've been asking you quite a few questions. So you get to ask Milo a question, which is our feature called Ask an American. So
nice.
Yeah, take it away and ask him anything you like.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. Milo, I've been trying to think of, because Kev mentioned this, I've been trying to think of a specifically American-facing question to ask you. I don't really have a kind of a question sort of per se, but I was interested to talk to you about confidence, because this kind of goes back to some of the stuff that we discussed previously. But I've played with a few American musicians, and all of them have been lovely. And one of the things that has kind of struck me is that they have a different kind of natural kind of, you could call it confidence, or kind of, I don't know, just a kind of a comfort with success, and kind of talking about things that they've done well and all that sort of thing. They had kind of, in a way which is different to a lot of people from the UK. And this is obviously huge, very kind of broad strokes and sort of big generalizations. But I wonder if there's some truth in it, that maybe there's a kind of a cultural kind of, there's a different kind of cultural take on sort of talking about that kind of stuff. I had a gig at Ronnie's a while ago. I know, it wasn't even a gig, it was a jam back in the day. I was in the audience, and we were all sort of, it was full of musicians. We were all kind of getting up to play, and this fella came over, and we just sort of got chatting. And he was just like, "Oh, you're gonna get," and he was from America, and he said, "Are you gonna get up and play?" And I was just like, "Oh, yeah, maybe." I was just like, "I'll see how I feel and stuff." And I was like, "How about you?" He's just like, "Yeah, definitely." And he's just like, "I'm probably gonna kill it." I was just like, "Oh, you mate?" He's just like, "Yeah, I'm really good at drums." And I was just like, "Bloody mate, that's quite." That's a strong flavor, but also part of me thought, like, that must be so nice to just be able to kind of be like, yeah, I'm great, I believe in myself, and I'm about to smash this gig. And fair play to him, he did get up and he was really good at drums. It turned out. Now obviously I know that not all Americans are like that, but it's a kind of exaggerated kind of example of something which I have noticed, which is more of a sense of being at ease with success and being able to talk about it. Does any of that ring true with you at all?
Maybe. I mean, it could be true, like a compensating for a lack of confidence.
Maybe. Yeah,
confidence and stuff, and just be like, I'm going to pretend I'm confident.
Yeah.
I think it's possible. I do think as children in the US, depending on who your parents are, you are probably more like, oh, you're the greatest. I mean, that's why you get the American Idol, where they go up and they're awful, but they actually think they're good. But I think it's a cultural thing. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, it's kind of a related story, but I think it'll work for this. I was listening to a podcast with the guys who made the app Headspace, the meditation app.
Yeah.
They're British. And so they were here in the UK, and they're trying to like get funding for their app and stuff like that. And they're having a hard time because everybody's like, what? No, you can't do that. That's not going to work, any of that kind of stuff. And then they went over to the US to get funding for it. And that's actually why they founded the company in the US, is because over there, they're like, oh yeah, you can do that. And then also, have you considered doing this? Try this as well. And it's a very different cultural attitude of here. I think things are so traditional to an extent that it's hard to break out of that. And I think for years past, people weren't encouraging of their children, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the impression I get. And I probably more recently that's changed.
Yeah.
And it's this, boarding school idea and the education system and that kind of stuff is,
right.
Just stay in your lane, do what you're supposed to do, don't want to step out. And I don't think that's as much of a thing over the US. So that's my theory on that subject. Or they're really they have no confidence whatsoever, and they're just covering it up by acting overconfident.
That's always a kind of possibility. I mean, one of the things that you kind of notice about kind of music generally over here is that a lot of British artists have the same kind of trajectory in terms of how they're seen by the public and how they're covered in the news and stuff like that. And you'll kind of get somebody who breaks out, suddenly achieves a kind of a lot of sort of crossover success or something like that. Kind of like a lot of critical success for a time. And then I think in the UK, it seems to me we often kind of suddenly get quite annoyed with them for being successful. Yeah. And then there'll be a huge kind of backlash. And it's happened to so many artists. There'll suddenly kind of be a point where we're like, you're now too successful, so we're going to put you back in your box.
Yeah, it's like you're only allowed to get so big, and then it's like,
it becomes annoying. It's like, so you think you're big, do you? Yeah.
Well, about that.
We've suddenly changed our minds. So that happens, and then eventually the person kind of either then kind of carries on for a long period of time, and suddenly everybody then goes back. Once they've kind of become the underdog again, and they've kind of like their stars faded a little bit, and often that kind of comes with other sort of challenging things, and then we kind of like them again. Or they die, and nobody loves a dead rock star more than the United Kingdom. For some reason, for us, it's kind of like we're now allowed to like somebody because they're kind of that kind of mindset doesn't apply to someone who's not around. So it kind of, and it's very sad. You see, I think, it could be, I'm trying to do, but like with somebody like Amy Winehouse, who was absolutely dragged through the press. But as soon as she died, people were like, oh yeah, she was amazing. which obviously she always was, but it's suddenly, people seem suddenly a lot more comfortable with saying that. And it strikes me that maybe in America, there's more of a culture of generally celebrating success in a more of a sort of straightforward way. But yeah, no, it's just something that interests me, and it kind of goes back to our previous sort of thing, and my favourite subject, which is talking about insecurities and how much you hate yourself.
It is funny though that you kind of bring up what you just did, because on probably one of our first episodes we ever did, we actually discussed the concept of the art and the artist, how you kind of like split the two.
Yeah.
Depending on that character, things that they may have done in their life. And no, it's really interesting that you touched on that, because it's very, very relative to a previous discussion. And like I say, the Amy Winehouse thing is probably a massive example of the press really doing what the press can be guilty of doing a lot of the time. And
definitely
that push and pull element of you're a star and now we're going to drag you down, and then which is not a nice thing at all. But like you say, once they seem to, someone's passed on, they're like, oh, we can just like glamorize you again, like in this posthumous
celebrate you. Yeah. Very strange. I don't understand it, but anyway.
Very odd.
Interesting. I noticed that with the Prince Philip death, actually, prior to his dying, kind of the press and a lot of people kind of ripped on him and made fun of him. And then as soon as he died, everybody was like, look at all the great things he did when he was around.
Yeah, very strange. I mean, I could be, I'm not kind of familiar enough with like American culture to sort of know if that is a definite thing. If that's something that doesn't happen in the States, but it's definitely a thing here. There's also a kind of sometimes from certain elements of the press, there's a kind of a keenness to show how fundamentally how we're all the same. How normal we all are, which, there's no such thing as kind of not normal. I mean, the more you kind of, on occasion that I've worked with kind of people who are famous or whatever, you're struck by the fact that they are just a normal human being. They're not kind of, they don't have wings and, laser eyes or anything like that. I mean, we kind of really do build people up to be something more than what they are. But there's still room for someone to be a normal human being and still have something special about them. And it's I think it's completely fine for that to be celebrated. But definitely in the UK, there's some very strange kind of conflicting ideas that I think certain aspects of the press and the public maybe have surrounding that. And I think that probably is kind of cultural, but yeah.
Well, fascinating subject, fascinating. But now it's time for our badly drawn bamboo section. So you have mentioned studying art and stuff. So
I've set myself up for a fall.
I'm looking forward to this one, Gabe.
I'm anxiously waiting to see your badly drawn bamboo.
Here's my badly drawn bamboo. I don't know if you can see through the thing. So you've got
an oar.
I don't know if you can see it. So it's Kev, and he's holding an oar.
I think that's Kev when he's 60.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
haven't done justice to how handsome you are, man. But bear in mind, I haven't seen you in quite a while.
So you didn't take that off any. That was just kind of like almost like a memory.
It was from memory. So I was trying to guess as to what you look like now, and I was wrong. As soon as you came up on screen, I was just like, "Oh, that's a shame."
No, I mean the beard's a little thicker, but I like that. I like these kind of rougher sketches and idealisms.
I'll explain the oar because you and I obviously met when we were younger, when my family used to go to the Scilly Isles on holidays, right? And you, as far as I understood, am I right thinking you lived out there or still do, or you definitely seem very much part of like the kind of...
Yeah, I was a big fixture at that place for a good chunk of time. I spent a good number of years out there working, and I would have, like many of us, would have loved to have lived out there permanently. I think all of us have that. I think that's the main connection that a lot of us have that go there, is that it's just such a fantastic place. Milo, the Isles of Scilly is a small group of islands just off the coast of Cornwall, so right off the southwest tip of the UK. And if you get a chance to go, absolutely go, especially if you want to just unwind and totally just kick your shoes off, run around barefoot, which is what I probably spent 95% of my time doing. It is just, there's no judgment, it's literally, you can be dressed in whatever you want, it's kind of like, just go and chill. And
wonderful place. And it's St Agnes where we used to be hanging out, was there's no cars really on the island, is there? Or like very, very few, and you can kind of, it's great as kids, you can kind of just go nuts really, and it's awesome. So I remember you as a kind of a surfing kind of seafaring muscle bound man, so that's what I've gone for. But your beard, your beard, I've underestimated the beard, man, and you're gonna have to tell me a secret, because I've attempted to grow like a proper sailor kind of beard situation for quite a while, but it gets to a point where I sort of start getting a decent beard, and then it grows at a right angle. I don't know what's going on, so I look like I'm constantly kind of going sideways really fast.
It's all that sleeping you've done in the downtime.
Yeah, it's definitely that. Sort of sleeping game. My 3-year-old kid. But what's your beard secret on a tangent? What are we talking here? Oil, wax?
Beard secrets. Yeah, I suppose a good
kind of injection.
Because I do have like under there. I don't know if you see. There's like a little.
Yeah, there's a patch.
That's a little clear there. And
I like that.
There are a few areas that kind of aren't as strong as others, but yeah, I mean, it's certainly time. I think time is the only thing, and I'm one of those people who just, I'm really not too fussed. Like I'll just let it keep going and going. And if somebody says, "Hey, you, I don't like that," it's like, I've never been one on that kind of aesthetic sense, quite clearly.
You're great. This is the thing. Talk about insecurity. I've got beard envy. Really, you're really triggering me with that, because I'd love to have a beard, but I can never get past that point. So
I'm sending beard vibes over the ether. I would purely just say time, and then a bit of brushing. Get a decent beard comb, or even like my beard. I think the reason, without again elaborating too far, my beard, my hair naturally is quite curly, and
you're very lucky. Mine isn't.
So my beard hair acts in almost the same way. It just keeps springing back up on itself. So I get this carpet that it doesn't actually grow that long. So I don't really trim it too often.
Right.
Other than maybe under the trims. Chin strap.
For sure.
But literally, it kind of springs back on itself. So just brushing it. So I actually use like the equivalent of basically like an afro comb, like a wide tooth comb, and pull that through it. And it hurts sometimes, but then you get through that. And then the other one. So for anyone on Milo yourself, if you have to grow a beard,
dude, it would take me 6 years to get that to that length of a beard.
But it could be your breakthrough role. It could be your breakthrough role, and but literally, I would say.
In the beard, it's funny because like I don't really have any gray on my hair, maybe a couple strands, but my beard is like white gray.
Really?
It's so funny looking.
I think
that's cool.
I think you look awesome with a good old, a Santa Claus job going.
Do either of you guys have kids? Kev, is there a...
I don't know.
Right. Because I feel like that's one of the things, as soon as you have a kid, it's, get heavily into jazz, big beard, barbecue. A lot more barbecuing. During lockdown, I was doing carpentry, which is definitely like a dad. That's like
no, I'm loving all of that. I'm all over that. Just no kid. So.
No, I know. You've kind of got the best of both worlds in many ways. Nice and relaxed and well slept.
But I have got to, fortunately, I have got to rate your sketch of Bamboo.
Oh, right. Okay, should I put it back
up?
So
you can, briefly if you like, so I can give it Okay, so yeah, like I say, I love the rough sketch kind of idea. And considering you did it from, freehand, and this is badly drawn bamboo. So if it was really bad, you'd have a really low rating. So the higher the rating is, it's almost like this reverse badness. Yeah, I'm going to give you a 7 on that, actually.
I feel like that's good. That's quite safe. I'm kind of nestling in between, like amusingly bad and kind of good.
No, you definitely didn't fall into the badly drawn bamboo.
No,
I don't think we've had a 1 out of 10 or a 0 out of 10 yet.
Is there a place where you can? I'm interested to see where mine sits in the context with the other ones
we
you had.
should
Is it
put
online?
up like a scale, actually.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
We do need a proper Blue Peter gallery of them coming across, because we've had a few. We showed a few in the last episode or episode before. We had around about 4 or 5. The guys kind of like sent in their own as well. Some of the viewers did as well. And this week we've not got any additional ones, but no, we'll try and put up we may put up an end of season gallery or something like that that people can check out, and you can see where you fall, a bit like the kind of Top Gear, I think, where they did the star in a reasonably priced car, but this is top end badly drawn bamboo feature.
I like those moments where you kind of find out where you sit. As we were chatting about the other day during lockdown, one of my things was kind of doing rubbish carpentry, and I kind of got really into kind of slightly ropey dad carpentry, and there was a kind of a brief period where I kind of thought, oh, man, maybe this is going to be my thing. Maybe I should just be like a kind of like a chilled kind of carpenter guy, and my life would be a lot less sort of full on, and it'd be great. Maybe I should do that. And then I went online to look at all the other dad carpentry that's going on, and it turns out I'm really crap at carpentry. So I'm carrying on, but my hopes of making it as a carpenter on the side are sort of slightly faded.
So the carpenter dream was quickly just went. It was there.
And not living that dream.
No, that's one of the dreams. Yeah. I'm gonna leave that one.
No, because I do remember that you used to do a bit kind of when you was on Silly visiting. I think it was with Joff. I think you kind of helped him a few times, because you always had an interest in it, which is
there was one point where me and my friend Adam made a raft, really, really publicly on the beach, because there's a campsite by the beach. And that's where everybody was kind of camping.
Your story is very similar to what, so carry on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure, I can imagine there's been a few kind of catastrophic raft anecdotes from kind of people staying on the island and sort of pretending to be like islanders for like a week and they go, but yeah, with me and Adam, we made this raft really seriously. Like, we were really into it, and people were literally, it kind of became like a sort of daytime TV thing where all the campers were kind of watching us slowly assemble this thing. And then we, with like huge fanfare, we kind of pushed out, and there were literally people with like binoculars kind of watching, like, these are the raft guys, like they've made the raft, now the raft's happening.
The whole week was all, prime time.
Yeah, and it immediately sank. but kind of, we hadn't kind of, there were no reserves of kind of, we'd taken it so seriously, but it was like way worse than if we'd just been sort of like a couple of dicks kind of drunk. So, we were really kind of like, this raft's gonna be sick, and then like immediate, last scene of Titanic.
A very similar story. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember Tiger Tim, Pirate Tim?
I do. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So absolutely. Yeah. So Tiger Tim and I, Pirate Tim. So Pirate Tim Milo was another guy that worked on the Isles of Scilly for a number of years, and me and him became relatively good friends, and we also built a raft one year, but it actually turned out to be, Tim was very, very boaty, if that was is that the right word. And he he absolutely, he made this like 3-hulled catamaran.
Oh really?
Basically during the course of one summer. So on one of the bit larger islands, there was like a small tip, like refuse place. And he collected tons and tons of jerry cans and things, and just so to create the displacement there. And the buoyancy was ridiculous.
He really went in.
It floated and it sat in the water really low, but he'd made this kind of like little cabin, like little deck and everything.
Wow.
And so we just went out and sat on it and anchored up kind of in the little bay, in Preglis, and just took a few beers out there and sat out there and drank beers, after
that
work.
Sounds amazing.
The afternoon, it was glorious. Sun was shining. That's the classic St. Agnes Day. The sun literally sets, over the back of the campsite, so you get amazing sunsets and things, Milo. So it's just, I'd say that would be my version of living the dream in that moment.
Yeah, man, nicely segue back. That is kind of, I can imagine that would be amazing. I've got a real mental image of you guys. And you sort of like built like an outboard motor out of driftwood, like really like proper kind of,
He literally made a bloody, what's the wheel called? Literally. Wow. And he had a ruddered system.
Oh man,
I don't know.
An amazing dad.
That's totally a fun kid project to do as a kid.
I have no idea when he went to work during that time, because he spent that summer was dedicated to building that boat. That was his mission. That was his life project almost over that summer. But so living the dream, I am going to bring it back because we're going to go back to the survey and we've got another question on there.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
A few more answers, and then again we'll bring it back to us guys. And so let's see what question 2 was. So we kind of went a tiny little bit deeper, gave them an easy question to start off with. And then we said to them, so if you were or are living the dream, how do you think that would change or make changes to your outlook on life? And we gave two initial options of I'm not living the dream, but I'll comment below, and then the other one was I am living the dream, and then they're going to expand on their comments. So again, we had a few comments, and I wonder now if the guy that we were trying to figure out what his dream was, maybe he clarified further on that. I hope he did. I hope he didn't skip the question. It's teasing us.
He's so mysterious, isn't he?
I'm living a dream, but I'm not going to tell you my secrets.
He's toying with us. Yeah.
So essentially, we've got a few comments I'm going to bring up on there, and it's so I feel that my low self-esteem stops me living the dream.
Oh, that's sad.
That is not what I wanted to read actually there. Initially.
That poor person. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very common thing.
I could imagine, and like you say, those conversations definitely should be had more, and people should be able to open up and be more honest about those things. So kudos to them for actually being, fully honest about that.
Absolutely.
And then we've got. If I had a dream, it would be like most of us to make a living out of poetry. I assume he's talking about obviously the sector that he's in, a bit like you saying within music. So no, that's a nice one, nice one to go down. I hope that he or she does.
For sure.
And then we have I'm doing what I want to with my life, and I'm learning to do it without much apology. I'm accomplishing goals I have set for myself, and thus I am living my dream. So maybe that was our guy.
That's the guy, isn't it? It's the same kind of same flavour, you can tell. Yeah.
And then finally, I'll just check 1 second. There's a couple of others in there, but no, we'll go with that one. Okay, so this person puts, well, I am on my way to living my dream. For me, it might not be living the dream to others. The dream for me is financial independence, freedom to make choices to do the things I want. Time is a currency, so I look at where I'm trading this currency too much, and then looking to pull back and give myself more time to do the things that contribute to me living the dream. So that was a good one to end on there. Yeah. So if you want a reminder on the question there, guys, it literally was, if you are living the dream, how do you think that would change your outlook on life? So Gabe, I'll go with you.
So if you were, I think it's a hard one, because it kind of depends on what kind of success means to you. I think that definitely a big part of my kind of jumped up kind of philosophy that I've sort of jumped up for how I kind of go about pursuing playing and all the rest of it, is to do with kind of acceptance, you know, and a sense of being able to kind of look yourself kind of in the face and identify problems, you know, and in this context I'm talking about playing, but I think it also applies to just sort of you as a person generally, to be able to kind of look at your so as a musician, you know, look at your playing, look at a gig and kind of go, right, well, that wasn't great, or there was an issue there, and this is what that was. But then to kind of make your peace with it and to kind of go, but that's okay. And it's not the same as kind of giving up and going, you know, it doesn't matter. It's more of a kind of a sort of a process wherein you kind of accept the truth of it. And what I find often is that if you really are able to do that, it becomes a lot easier to work at the thing, work at the problem. It's very, I still find it very kind of hard to describe, but there's a kind of a removal of like kind of cognitive dissonance. If say I'd have a bad gig and I'm kind of going like, oh man, that was awful. And the cognitive dissonance comes from, one part of me is kind of going, but I'm a piano player and I see myself as being good at the old piano or whatever. But the universe seems to be telling me that I'm actually, you know, there's a problem with my playing, or that I'm kind of having a kind of a bad, you know, that I wasn't good then or whatever. And there's a kind of a cognitive dissonance wherein it becomes hard to accept the reality of kind of what's happened. And I found that, yes, if I'm lucky, I can reach a place where I accept the truth of like a negative thing. And that feels very kind of freeing. I don't know if any of this is making sense, but like in terms of like how success would feel, I think it would probably feel like a kind of a feeling of being at peace with where I am and kind of where my career is and all the rest of it. And a sense of kind of acceptance of it, because I don't think that there would be a point with me where I'd arrive at some kind of, you know, finishing post of having completed being a jazz piano player or like a pop piano player or anything like that. Like I don't think those things exist, but I would hope to reach some place of kind of content and kind of acceptance of where I'm at. Does any of that make any sense?
No, it does. But Milo, yeah, I mean,
yeah, I think it makes sense, because as an entertainer of some type, that contentment that you're able to do what you want to do, accepting that you're at a place, the best place that you're going to be able to be at within that, and still be able to do it. For actors, for example, to be able to actually make a living as an actor versus potentially, you know, the rarity of being an A-lister or something like that, but you're still working in the field and doing what you want to do. So that level of acceptance and contentment would be like, you know what, it may not be here, but it's pretty damn good to be here.
Yeah,
versus
that's definitely
here,
yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think that's really true, and it touches upon another thing, which I think is that there's kind of, when you think about kind of confidence in anything, there's kind of different kinds of confidence, and the best kind of confidence is informed. You know, so when I was younger, there's probably kind of times where I suspected, I was like, oh man, I might be the next best thing in piano playing, but it wasn't informed. It was just kind of like, you know, like a kind of a young bloke who kind of just hadn't kind of explored that world very much, and all I had was like a very narrow frame of reference. As I kind of have gotten older and kind of moved through my sort of profession and stuff like that, I now am able to kind of take some kind of confidence from a more objective viewpoint on my playing, and where it sits in the kind of great scheme of things. And it's kind of a more balanced sort of thing. So I'm able to kind of, because I have an actual informed sense that there are some things that I can do well, which has come from, very kind of just kind of practical situations. So, if I'm booked repeatedly for a certain style of playing, then the university telling me, oh, you can do this, and there's kind of some actual facts and proof to back it up. And because of that, it makes it easier for me, weirdly, to kind of accept the things about my playing or what I do, which I'm not happy with. Because it's more balanced and more kind of real and informed, Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, it definitely comes through that, like you say, that evidence backing that.
Yeah, exactly.
The time-honoured element that's as you progress through your own field, it's that gives you that spurs the confidence. Like the confidence breeds confidence. In essentially, it's always, creativity is always going to be something that's, well, I feel is always going to be ever evolving. Like you say, you might not reach that incredibly happy point or contented point, but there will be a stage where you get to, as like Milo referenced as well, that you can be doing something professionally in the field that you want to do, that you love doing, which that alone obviously is a huge, dream would be a strong word there, but I think it is a huge dream of a lot of people to kind of take something that would initially maybe start as a hobby and that they can professionally do as a career. So if you can get into that level, that I was from a perspective that would seem somewhere that there's a level of contentment, even if it's not a creative contentment, because that is, as I say, ever evolving. But I did really like the person's comment that we do think we've identified our living the dream guy, and that comment about them saying that it's about the time part as well, not as a currency. Actually, you might be absorbing and putting every effort into something there, well, actually, that might not be the right angle that you should be investing in. So recognizing when to kind of pull away from that and start drawing towards somewhere else. And clearly there, so in some ways, maybe there is a form of blueprint that on the outset, we don't think that there is a blueprint to this kind of success or living the dream, because it is all relative. But surely you've got to recognize certain waypoints or avenues which go, oh, actually, I need to pull away from that bit now and start kind of
carpentry is the way forward. Let's do a raft making company.
I'm going to partner with you on that.
Mate, I will make a killing. I have to work on the beard. Bearded rafts.
All right, guys. So we've talked about your career a bit, Gabe. We've talked about the survey. So next question is, who is one of the best musicians you've worked with, and who would you really love to perform with?
Oh man. Yeah. So it's a hard one, because there are loads of musicians that I've worked with who I think are amazing and who I've been really lucky to end up playing with and whom I really rate. And they're all great for different reasons. So it's kind of very hard to sort of rank them in that kind of way. But in terms of kind of musical experiences of like playing with people live that I've had, there are a few which spring to mind. One of them was a gig I had just before COVID happened, and it was through a friend of mine, and he said American musician. With this kind of this guy Mo Pleasure, who's just amazing player, lovely person. He's had this incredible career, and he's kind of played with everybody. He's played with sort of Earth, Wind and Fire and Ray Charles and all these kind of people. And he threw me this gig. He said, basically, Mike Phillips, who plays sax for Stevie Wonder and who also played alto for Prince. He's got a gig in London. Do you want to play in the house band for that? There's kind of like an event, kind of. It's not like there's kind of a concert sort of night going on, and it was basically Mike Phillips and the house band playing with him, and then playing with a bunch of other artists. Are you up for that? And I was just like, yeah, like absolutely. And I'm a massive Prince fan as well, so that would probably be one of the people that I'd love to play with. Obviously, you know, even if that had been on the cards, very sadly, no, it isn't. But like in Fantasyland, Prince would be one of my people to play with. And so I was super excited to play with this guy. And we turned up at the gig, and I was just there, playing keys with Mike Phillips, having the time of my life. And then halfway through the night, all the crowds suddenly were really quiet, and I was trying to work out what was going on, and I looked in the corner of the room, and Stevie Wonder's entire band just like filed in, and it turned out that obviously Mike Phillips is in town, and the reason why he was in town was because Stevie Wonder was playing at Hyde Park, and all his band were kind of kicking around, so they all kind of rocked up, and if anybody hasn't seen Stevie Wonder live, like you know, in person, or like on the internet, on YouTube, or whatever, I'd recommend checking out that band, because they are one of the best around. Like, absolutely amazing. And I saw them at Glastonbury the previous year, and it was just one of the best live experiences I've ever had. I loved it. And so they all kind of cropped up, and immediately I had. I was sort of very excited / quite sort of stressed, because they then gradually kind of got up on stage and started playing with us, and they kind of, you know, were sort of people in the house band were taking turns playing with these guys, and eventually they were kind of all up on stage. And there was one point where it was just me and Stevie Wonder's band on stage, and it was amazing. Beautiful. Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. And then we were sort of there basically jamming with them for about 3 hours. They were just sort of really loving playing, and were incredibly nice, you know, really lovely people. Obviously amazing players. Like, one of those things with like a really good band like that is everything becomes so easy. It just feels very, very natural, because they're all so musical. So like, it's just like an amazing kind of big sort of musical hug, where you don't really feel like you can go wrong, because they're all musically so supportive and stuff like that. So that was an amazing experience. Yeah. But then also, you know, I've had experiences of playing live, which have been a lot more low key, like very intimate kind of. Like, there's a very intimate gig that I did with my friend Adam King. It's an amazing jazz bass player, and that was literally at my parents' just sort of hometown in Somerset, and just me and Adam playing in a converted wine cellar in Castle Carey, and an audience of about 20 people. And for whatever reason, like, it was just just one of the best gigs I've had, and we both were just really enjoying it. But yeah, those would be two.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it was really good. What's the other question? People that I'd like to play with.
Yeah.
And then, so Prince obviously would have been one of them, and D'Angelo as well. I'd love to play with him. Don't know if you guys are familiar with his music, but he's if anybody is an amazing American neo soul artist from the States, and he had an album called Voodoo, which I've got here. And it kind of came out in the sort of early noughties. Here it is. That's D'Angelo, Voodoo. Definitely check it out. Anybody who hasn't. He hasn't got the.
I like how that's not just the CD, but that's the actual LP. Even better.
I know. Yeah. Next levels of nerd. I love it. But yeah, he'd be one as well. Just amazing musician, amazing kind of multi-instrumentalist.
That's awesome. I mean, like you say, you mentioned I like how you mentioned the two contrasts in terms of the low key gig as well as a really intimate one, where you can kind of see everybody and all their reactions, and just the general vibe of being a beautiful moment. But then the amazing, you know, Stevie Wonder's band. I mean, I too have seen Stevie Wonder at Glastonbury. I think that was in 2010.
I think it must have been the same gig. Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah, I think that's the one I saw.
What a day.
It was amazing. I literally, it's really interesting because my parents live near Glastonbury, so we kind of go a lot every year, and that kind of slot, the kind of legacy slot, like Sunday, I think it was a Sunday evening or whatever, was often where you kind of have like a big household name comes and plays. And it's often amazing, but it's not always kind of life-changingly good. You know, sometimes you get people who are like super well-known, real kind of institutions, but they just kind of don't quite deliver on the kind of promise, or you know, they're having an off day or whatever. And Stevie Wonder is so iconic, you know, such a kind of his sort of like image and all the sort of stuff surrounding him has kind of got so huge. And I remember thinking before the gig, I was just like, man, it's going to be interesting seeing him live to see if that stuff is all, if it has kind of got bigger than he actually is, in a way. I don't know, but he came outside of the stage playing a guitar. I don't know if you remember this, but it was the same, which was just like amazing anyway. And he was like, and they were playing My Eyes Don't Cry No More, which is like one of his lesser well-known songs, but a favourite of mine. And it was instantly amazing. It was like seeing a prophet. Like, it was really, really, incredible.
Yeah, it was otherworldly. I think that day would be praised, because everyone, and I obviously you can't see everybody, but I feel like everyone was just totally sucked into that moment. And I'm sure there wasn't it something like 130, 140,000 or something that were kind of like stacked back. Like I was near, you know, the tree that's kind of like a good distance back, but there's a synonymous tree at Glastonbury that kind of like lines up with the pyramid stage. And I was around that kind of area, and I remember just like looking over my shoulder like this, and still it was going on, you know. But everybody was in such, I mean, festivals create that kind of environment anyway, but it was just, I'm happy to be, you know, to witness that live performance. And
maybe too.
To bring this all back round, for you to, you know, then performed with Stevie Wonder's band is...
Wow. It was amazing.
I'm like, I'm feeling that moment then. So for you to have played, I mean, wow, the heart and everything must have been.
It was mega. It was it was really, it was a funny combination of kind of obviously very intense, because they're fantastic, and Stevie Wonder, anything to do with Stevie Wonder is just so amazing and kind of iconic and stuff. But it was also kind of nice because by that point I'd done this job enough to know that I was, you know, at least able to function as a musician. So it was kind of you know, and I was able to kind of do that job of like playing piano on stage and keys on stage. So the main feeling that I had was just like one of like excitement, and just like feeling very lucky and kind of privileged, and it was great. And they were super kind of kind and to everybody. You know, they may have been doing an amazing acting job and sort of secretly were gritting their teeth, but like it didn't seem that way. It seemed they were just generally really enjoying, people who really love playing, you know. And it sounds like an obvious thing, but definitely felt like that's the biggest, kind of one of the biggest tools in a musician's arsenal is just love of doing it. Because if you love it, it does show when you're playing, and it's something that you have to sometimes work at keeping alive. You know, you never want it to just become like a job. And
you know, and rightfully so. You was there in your own right, you know, amongst there as an equal. You know what I mean?
Well, I definitely wouldn't say that. But as a musician,
what were you talking about earlier about having that confidence of being? I'm on that level. Equally, you were there for a reason and the right reasons. So,
man, who knows how these things pan out.
I'm glad though, because your answer wasn't a cheesy one at all, and that does bring us on to our next segment as well. Puns galore, firing off in all directions.
It's such a palate cleanser. I like it. Yeah.
There is strings of cheese just wandering around. But yeah, we're at that segment where we have to ask on this show that we always ask everybody, and it is, Gabe, what is Milo's favourite segment?
Yeah, I like how you said favourite segment on the show. Yeah.
And that can never turn down an excuse to fit in a pun somewhere.
Good.
See, I'd make a great dad. Rubbish.
Yeah, man, absolutely. You've got all the elements,
So yeah, tell us, what is one of your favourite cheeses, or many cheeses, because this is a discussion.
As in horrendous puns. Oh, cheeses?
No, your favourite. Yeah, your favourite.
Oh man, oh god, I feel so relieved. You said something about puns earlier, and while you were talking about it, I was mentally trying to prepare a pun, and nothing was coming.
Favorite cheesy pun?
Yeah.
Almost lined you up for a big fall there.
Oh man, I was so relieved. Cheese, I can happily talk about for hours. Favorite cheese? I come from Somerset, so there's lots of good cheese down there, and I like Godminster cheddar. Is my favorite cheese, which is there's a farm nearby. Yeah, it's a great cheddar, I tell you. Like, and you kind of, they sell it up here as well. I see it in sort of like middle class sort of farm sort of markets up in London, and that does, so I kind of get it here when I can. But and also like Boursin, which is like the lowbrow. I don't know if I feel like Boursin's like not like. Legit. If you're a cheese snob, I really like it as well.
I think if you like cheese and you're very well invested in your cheese, then yeah. Boursin's one of those that you'll go to and just be like, I'm gonna just grab this one.
You'll raise an eyebrow. Yeah.
But the interesting is, I want to know, because obviously I've heard of different cheddars as well, but what's the flavour of the Godminster?
It's quite. It's got a bit of a kind of kick, but it's not like overly acidic. It's quite sort of creamy. This is making me want cheese. It's really good. It's. I'm not like endorsed by Godminster, by the way. I'm just like.
Here we go. Here comes the tag.
Disclaimer. Yeah. It would be great to be, but I can recommend it, man. Yeah, if you see it, it's kind of like a purple kind of wax covering.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if I have, it hasn't registered.
Oh,
yeah, because obviously Milo, lots of different English cheeses that Milo will not have even kind of.
Well, it's nice.
Much about, but
we went down to a market that's in central London somewhere. Can't even think what it's actually called. It's outdoor, and they've got some cheese vendors and stuff there.
Yeah.
So we bought quite a few different kinds of cheeses when we were down there. So.
Yeah.
Was that Borough Market by any chance?
Borough Market, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Man,
it's a favorite. Some sausages, all kinds of good stuff.
It's the best. I love it.
All right, guys, that's a fascinating discussion about cheese. But let's wrap it up here. Gabe, you're going to close out the show for us with a piece, correct? But before you do, remind our viewers where they can go to discover more about your work.
So I've got a website called it's www.gabrielpiersmantel.com. And that's got like a few videos and things like that, and links to my Instagram as well. On Instagram, I'm Gabe PPM. That's where they can kind of find the stuff about me, and I generally sort of keep it updated with different bits and bobs I'm doing. Although I've been told to be more frequent with it. I'm not great at social media, so which apparently it's a good thing to do. But I promise I'll try and keep putting interesting things up there.
Perfect.
But,
All right, play us out.
Yeah, we'll just take this moment to say thanks for all our guests for watching, and we hope that you enjoy Gabe's piece as well. So, thanks again.
Well, that was fantastic. What do we have coming up next on the show, Kev?
Yeah, on Rip It Up coming up, we've got two great guests. We've got special effects artist Rod Matsui, all the way from Hollywood, and then we've got the beautiful, haunting vocals of the singer-songwriter Hattie Whitehead. So stay tuned for that. But we'll be well into our spooky season and Halloween. So also stay tuned for a very Halloween special as well. So, yeah.
Looking forward to it.